From Atlanta, Georgia, welcome to Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, a podcast for women on leadership and life skills with Rhea Story. Rhea shares powerful life and leadership principles, helping you maximize your potential and become the woman God created you to be.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode on Women with Influence. Today's episode is on Malala Yousafzai. And, it's interesting because Malala is known all around the world for her advocacy for education for girls. And her story is pretty powerful if you're not familiar with it. Malala was born in Pakistan in 1997, and her father was a teacher at a girls' school there in the village where they lived. And in 2008, the Taliban took control of the village, and they banned a lot of things when they took over. But one of the things that they did when they took over was say that the girls could no longer go to school. And so, at 11 years old, Malala was told that she could not go to school anymore. That the Taliban would not let women or girls specifically be educated there. They didn't believe in that. So, but Malala loved school, and she believed that girls had a right to education just like boys. And so she was very vocal about her opinion and stood up for what she believed. And she took a lot of personal risk to stand up for that. But what's interesting is that when we believe in something and when we're willing to stand up for it, there's no doubt that people recognize that. But that's what it really is to be a leader and an influencer, right? I mean, it's to have that character and say, these are my values and I'm going to stand up for them and stand on them. And sometimes that comes at a personal cost. And that was true for Malala as well. In 2012, she was actually on a bus, and a member of the Taliban got on the bus and shot her in the head. And miraculously, she survived. And she woke up almost a couple weeks later. It took that long for them to get her stabilized, and she actually recovered and survived. So a pretty incredible story. But, that's what's fascinating about people like Malala is someone who is willing to stand up for something and say, this is worth fighting for, even if it comes at a personal risk. And for her, it certainly did. She almost lost her life. And even today, she didn't slow down. She didn't let it stop her. She didn't quit. That's what's fascinating is she refused to give up. She refused to say that I will quit just because of how dangerous this is. And so she continues to advocate for education for girls all around the world. She established the Malala Fund, and in 2014, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and she's the youngest Nobel laureate. So pretty awesome story. But I saw Malala speak it's been a couple years ago. I think it was in 2015. And I saw an interview that she did with Dr. Henry Cloud. And he was interviewing her, and they wouldn't, they broadcast the interview, but they didn't disclose her location for safety reasons. So, but it was pretty neat to see the interview live via live broadcast. And I got a couple of quotes from Malala. And the theme of the interview was on brave leadership. So I think that fits right in with our Women with Influence series, because as women, as leaders, we are required to be brave, to be bold and stand up for our convictions. And that's not always easy to do. So I loved the theme and the concept of her interview on brave leadership. So I wanted to share some quotes with you on that. And the first thing that I wrote down that she said is that bravery has no limit. Bravery has no limit. And when I stop and think about that, what does that mean? Bravery has no limit. To me, it means that when we're willing to be brave as leaders, as women, that doesn't stop. We don't get to put that down on the weekend and say, "Oh, I'm not going to be brave this weekend." Because being brave means that we have to be brave, and even when we don't feel like it or when it's not convenient, being brave isn't it's not a job that we can leave at work at the end of the day. Being brave is a life decision, a life commitment. She goes on to say, it is our duty to speak out truth. And, if you go to her website, she says on there, I tell my story not because it's unique, because it is the story of many girls. And then she goes on to say, if we want change, we must step forward. If we want change, we have to step forward. And, there again, I think a lot of times it's so easy for us to get comfortable and settle for status quo in life. But if we want change, when we look around us, if we want things to change, we actually have to take action. Because if we're just comfortable settling for the status quo, then why would we expect anybody else to do anything different? So when we want change, when we look around, we've got to be the ones willing to step up and say, I'm willing to do something different if I want to get something different. And Malala is just an incredible example of that, and obviously influencing people all around the world at such an incredible young age. But she hasn't let it stop her. She's faced incredible adversity and healing from her injuries, and she hasn't let that slow her down, not for 1 minute. If anything, it's almost made her more determined and more of an advocate, more of a fighter. So I love that. Definitely an example of brave leadership, and that's something to learn from. Um, it's something to learn from when we understand what we are passionate about. It gives us that fuel, and we're willing to stand up for it. So you know, it's a journey. I talk to so many people who are like, "Well, I'm not really sure, or can't really articulate exactly what I'm fighting for, or what I'm interested in, what I'm passionate about." But I would encourage you just to stop and think about that. Some people like Malala are very fortunate to know, almost from a very young age, what they're passionate about and what they're willing to fight for, or what they're willing to dedicate their time and energy to doing. I've shared this with you before, but one of my favorite quotes is be passionate, no, not passionate. Let me say the quote right. Be fearless in pursuit of what sets your soul on fire. And man, I love that, because the concept of something that sets our soul on fire, that inspires us so much that it's not a job in what we do, but it's a calling. And that's just that's just incredible when you find that energy and that alignment, that harmony. But some people know it from a young age, but some people have to really discover it or find their way to it on their journey. I tell people it took me a few years to really be able to articulate that I really like to help women discover the fact that, number one, they are leaders, and then develop their leadership and their influence. Because I was that person that didn't think of myself as a leader necessarily. I thought leadership was for the boss or the CEO or the owner. But when we realize that leadership is influence, we can look at incredible examples of people like Malala and how much influence she's had all over the world. And some of our other episodes on women with influence, Mother Teresa, Anne Frank, Joyce Meyer. These are incredible women that we can learn from, but they didn't really have the title of boss or supervisor, and yet they've had some incredible influence. And so, that's really where I love to help women just tap into that potential within themselves to influence other people, and whatever their niche is, or wherever their corner of the world is. We don't have to worry about changing the whole world if we just focus on increasing our influence in our corner of the world. And it starts with ourselves, because the number one most important person to influence is ourself. And I think Malala has done an incredible job of doing that and influencing herself and standing up for what she believes. And I definitely think there's something we can learn from. Until next time.
Start increasing your influence and maximizing your potential with Ria's audiobooks. Available at audible.com, amazon.com, and iBooks. Please visit riastory.com to learn about Ria's books, resources, speaking, and training programs. Thanks for listening.